Welcome on in. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 preview for the Black Desert Championship. Gonna help you out for your showdown and prop slips, and over there for your Saturday exposure with a little weather report, some game theory, some ownership talk, also my core and value plays over there for the showdown. And then for the prop side, a full breakdown of the pin locations, stat averages from round 2, as well as a look at the underdog and prize picks board. So if you're only here for one of those sections, you can skip around there on the replay if that's what you're watching. If you're here live, welcome on in, strap on in. We're here for probably the next 45 minutes to an hour, talking all golf out there tomorrow. So if you have any questions for anything out there, just let me know down there in chat. I see we already have Jordan down there. What is going on? Phil as well. Also Curtis. You squeezed one lineup through, so that's always solid. There you go. Cheers to that. I've got a Red Bull out there myself, so I was needed a little kick me up. I like Red Bull. Anyways, I've been staying up super late watching some of the DP World Tour stuff, especially to see if there's an edge out there with props. So cheers to that. Let's get after it, guys. And let's start it off with our promo out here, which of course are our friends over at the Ship It Nation. They're a great source for all your needs with DFS, a great all-encompassing site that is not going to price gouge you in the process. And it's led by great creators like Tyler Tambellini, also Hoop over there, that are proven winners, great process-oriented individuals that are, the main goal is to make you a better player over there. So they give you projections for all those different sports. You've got UFC stuff on there, golf, football, NBA, NHL, when that comes along as well. And if you use code Luke10, you will get a discount off any membership. So make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. It's obviously been a partner here on the channel for a while, so maybe not the first time that you've seen it, but if you still haven't signed up, remember that you have that discount there. And if you're playing any of those sports, let alone if you're playing like 2-3 of them, well worth the money. It's not going to cost you as much as some of the other sites out there. Very affordable, especially for how many different sports they're offering. And it's the top tier stuff. So definitely recommend to check it out. And let's go ahead and hop on in out here for Saturday. So first thing I want to point out here is that our weather out there for round 2 was flip-flopped. Round 1, the AM wave was clearly a lot easier than the PM wave. And then out here on Friday, it completely flipped. And that was despite the wind being there in the PM. If we go up here to the observed weather today, from 3 p.m. onwards, it was in that 16 to even 24 mile an hour range there, which impacted play. It did make scoring slightly harder out there during that little window, but it still played 0.7 strokes easier overall. So that was likely due to the temperature. You could see got the whole way to the mid 90s, mid to low 90s, I should say, over there in the afternoon. Ball was flying further, relatively long course. The elevation makes it play a little bit shorter, but when it's 90 degrees, it plays even shorter than that. So you saw players take advantage. That's what I saw from the eye test out there. And again, that was despite having higher winds than we've seen for most of the week. In fact, I'd say even worse winds than what you had out there for round 1. So the weather was a little bit unexpected. This is a new golf course. We're going to see that from time to time. Our main slate exposure got a huge benefit from that. I, of course, went almost entirely, guys, that went off in the AM PM wave. But from the showdown perspective, it was very suboptimal. We obviously went the other direction. So you win some, you lose some. I guess that's the name of the game when it comes to PGA DFS. But certainly was not expecting that kind of outcome. So obviously these courses, right, they're fickle when they're new, and especially when we have a small sample size. But when it was a 1.3 shot difference, it was, and actually ended up being what, a 1.48 shot difference. So nearly a 1.5 shot difference between the 2 days. You would expect that to be the same the next, but crazy stuff. I don't know if you could have seen that coming. If you did, you probably had a pretty crazy day with your GPPs, and you maybe didn't even have to see it coming. It's worth noting that you can counter stack against the prevailing narrative if you just don't buy it, right? Obviously, data I think is decent to go off of. That's what I'm going to go off of on the channel. But if you have a different lean, maybe there's a reasoning for it, then go at by all means, right? You're going to find some leverage, probably a little bit lower ownership, which is always helpful out there in those GPPs. let's talk through what we have for the weather in round 3, which isn't going to be as impactful, at least when it comes to our lineup composition, because for round 3, they're in threesomes off of both tees. So they already went ahead and announced that over there on the PGA Tour Twitter, that they're going to be starting, I believe it was at 10:15 local time. And then the last tee time is a little bit afternoon. So it's about a 2-hour window of tee times, nothing too long out there, right? It's a relatively tight spread, which limits any kind of a quote unquote weather edge that you could find out there. So that's why we're not going to focus too much on this weather situation, but it's more so important when it comes to props, where I think if you can find guys that are starting around at 10, maybe 10:30 a.m., they're going to avoid almost all of the weather out there. At the very least, for like 3/4 of the round is going to be in windless conditions, where this is going to play -2 to maybe even -2.5 under par. So if they set it up easy for moving day, we're going to check the pin locations later when it comes to the prop perspective. I think maybe the earlier starters, the guys, as I mentioned, 10 to maybe 10:30 a.m., get a slight advantage over the guys starting at noon. The guys starting at noon are going to have to play their last maybe hour and a half, 2 hours of their round in slightly blustery conditions. You can see right around 3-4 p.m., just like the first 2 rounds, it's supposed to get a little bit windy towards the end. But those are also going to be the best players, the guys up towards the top end of the leaderboard. Also, the guys at the very bottom end of the board are going to also be finishing at that same time. So you could, in theory, fade that. So you would be fading the guys at -5 if you were doing that. You'd also be fading the guys that are up there at like -12, -13. But I think you'd be doing a little bit too much, right? Maybe you do that in a small 10-15% of your lineups. The rest of them should probably be played a little bit more straight up. So it's usually the case out there when we have this threesomes format. You just don't want to overthink and galaxy brain it when we have this kind of situation. So the weather was crazy round 2. It's not going to be that kind of disparity because of the tee time situation, which for me is a little bit refreshing, because I don't know what I would have to do, right, if it was spread out, because one day it was easier to play in the morning. The next day it was easier to play in the afternoon. And I guess the temperature was higher today, right? It had a higher apex temperature, right? Maybe that's what we'd have to look at. But it's hard to gauge, I guess, after the first 2 rounds. So it's a blessing in disguise, I think, that we have this kind of situation and that we don't have to go out there and commit to one side towards the other. So that's what I'll say about that. Let me bring up our projections now. We'll talk through some of my core plays and value plays. So I'm changing the format of these a little bit. Usually I just have guys down as a yes on here, and we talk through a few players. Obviously, if you've seen my main content, I have my core and my value plays, and it doesn't really matter what I'm labeling these players. They're all the same, right? Guys that I'm pointing out that per my process I'm landing on some of my higher owned plays for my round 3 exposure. So these are going to be players that I'm over the field on in 2.5, maybe even 3x out there in my exposure, and that aren't even guys that I'm getting a little bit of leverage on. And maybe up top, it's not a full 2.5, 3x leverage, but especially down towards the bottom end of the board. If somebody's like 5-6% owned, that's maybe like a 20-25%er for me. So these are my conviction plays. These are players I'm getting well over the field on. And they're more so, not so to give you like plays out there for round 3. It's more so to show you my process, what I'm looking for in plays. You're going to see a lot of themes, a lot of prevailing narratives out there from player to player that I'm looking for. And the main thing being ball striking. We're looking for players that can be low owned in some cases. Some are going to be chalky, especially towards the top end of the board, but they're all ball striking the crap out of it. And that for round 3, have a decent tee time. Now, it doesn't have to be optimal. Again, I don't think you have to focus on one end of the board, but if you're going to be teeing off like in that like 10:30 window, the 10 to 10:30 window, which would be your, I guess, like -7s, -8, actually maybe -8, -9s. Actually, let me just check the leaderboard real quick. We can figure it out real quickly if you just take a look at the leaderboard. So that'd be like T34. So T37, we have a Seamus Power starting there. It'd be like your -7s would be the latest finishing -7s would probably be your best bet for trying to find those kind of players. But obviously that'll be finalized tomorrow morning. So again, I don't think you have to galaxy brand it too much. I just wanted to throw that out there for some people. And let's go ahead and talk through some of these plays now. You squeezed. Oh yeah, by the way, if you have any specific players you want me to take on, now is the time for it. Any ownership numbers, by the way, a lot of them are censored on here, of course. My projections are posted on my Patreon page. That is something that I do by myself, by the way. That is aside from the Ship It Nation partnership. Everything that you're seeing on these live streams is what I have on my Patreon page. So some of it is censored on there. That is what I post over there on my Patreon page. They get everything, right? Every player's projection over there. But if you're curious about anyone, I can peek behind the wall and perhaps give it to a few people out there that ask about it. So if there's ownership, if there's specific player questions about just wanting to know, about whether I think that they're a decent player versus someone else, just let me know. Now's the best time for that. Alrighty, so Kurt Kitayama, what I like about him is the ball striking stats. So if we circle over here to Data Golf, on the other tab, I can show you exactly how he's getting it done to this point. But round 2, he ball striked the crap out of it and then lost 2.5 strokes putting. And you take a look at his round 1 performance, did a lot better with the irons. Today, it was just 0.71 strokes that he gained with the iron play, just under a stroke gained off the tee as well. Round 1, he gained over 5 strokes on approach. So if you average it out, he's one of the best iron players in the entire field. In fact, I'm going to get Kurt out of there and I just sort the field by shots gained approach. He's the number 3 player in the field when it comes to shots gained approach. So has been an absolute stud to this point. In fact, if you take a look at shots gained ball striking, which I think is the best metric to look at, this golf course is really off the tee heavy. They've got 2 drivable par 4s. You've got 3 par 5s that you can score on. If you miss off the tee, you're in the lava rocks and likely taking it on penalty. And unplayable, I should say, or some sort of penalty. So if we take a look at the shots gained metrics, I'm on the other tab over here. Kurt Kitayama is number 3 in shots gained ball striking as well. So just a stud. I know the ownership's high. He's 23%. A lot of that is because he's a 10K golfer. We had a few guys up here miss the cut, so there's not as many players 9K plus and to even choose from, right? Or that are even options out here for round 3. So he's high owned by default. So just ball striking the crap out of it. Just cannot find a putt to drop for his life. That is concerning, but I think he has upside for that kind of big round. He still made the cut, right? He's still -7 despite losing over 4.5 strokes putting. A big day could be coming for Kurt Kitayama if he's even a neutral putter, let alone if he's into the positive. Beau Hossler, $9,600. He obviously was a bet of ours this week if you tailed my exposure. He's -9, $9,600 playing pretty well, especially with his ball striking so far. And normally it's the putter for Beau Hossler. Normally you're hoping he gains 5-6 strokes putting and luck sack his way on the greens a little bit out there. If you take a look at his stat averages so far, he's losing nearly 2 strokes putting. And then he's gaining in all 3 tee to green categories. In fact, it's over a stroke per round off the tee, nearly 2 strokes per round on approach, and gaining over a stroke per round around the green, which I don't really care about the around the green stuff. But in terms of your ball striking, it's over 2 strokes. It's over 3 strokes ball striking per round. So elite level stuff. And then the putter, which is normally well into the positive on this surface, you can see over here on the right, the shots gained putting on bent grass. He gains normally about a half stroke per round on the surface. You'd have to think that's going to regress to the mean at some point. So I'm looking for ball strikers, particularly ball strikers that have putting regression. And there's maybe no putter in the field that is due for more putting regression than a Beau Hossler. And if he continues to hit it like he is, you saw the outcome last week, right? Nearly won that golf tournament. Isn't completely out of hand. If he gains 3-4 strokes putting like he's capable of and then hits it like he does, that is just an ungodly low round out there tomorrow. So that's why I'm playing him in DFS. That's why he's a core play for me. I see that kind of upside. Now he's got to flip the putter. Once again, it's not a given, right? That's not a given with Kurt Kitayama either. But if they can manage that, the rest of the game is shaping up to be a very solid performance. I'm also taking Lucas Glover here. Worth noting that the chalk is, especially on a Steven Yeager, he's nearly 30% owned. Matthew McCarty there at -12 is also chalky. Adam Svensson as well is, I believe, close to 30% ownership with both of those options. In this 9K range, Ben Griffin's over 20%. I'd say even over 22% actually there with a Ben Griffin. And EVR is a little bit under that 20% mark or right around it in my projections. It's pretty spread out for the most part. I'd say Seamus Power is the one low-owned player. He's about 11, 12% owned out there in my projections. Everyone else is at like 18 to 25%, I would say. The few exceptions, again, McCarty, Svensson are closer to 30%. Harris English is also really chalky compared to some of the other guys around him. And what you can tell with those players, or what you should be able to, figure out what the trend there is, they're all towards the top end of the board, right? Minus 12, minus 13, minus 12, minus 14 with the Steven Yeager. The casuals, people that are just looking at shots, gain metrics, and nothing else, love to play at the top end of the board. And there are a few of those players that I'm still using. In fact, let me count them. One, I think it's two. I think of the guys that are like minus 13 or better, I think it's two players that I'm using out there in my lineups. The other 4 or 5, I'm completely excluding from my exposure. So a lot of that's ownership based. You can't play all the chalk out there. You're going to have to find some players to get under the field on if you're going to get over the field on guys like a Kurt Kitayama, Bo Hostler. So there are players that are blacked out here that I am using in my exposure. That, of course, is on the Patreon version. But there are also a lot of players that I'm not using that are blacked out there as well. Let's see. Lucas Glover, another player that I want to point out. His ball striking stats are what you'd expect. I mean, he's just an absolute printing machine when it comes to his approach play. In fact, over the first 2 rounds, he's gaining 4 shots gained approach per round. And as you might suspect, he is losing 2.5 strokes putting. So he's been solid everywhere else, around the green, about neutral, a little bit over positive off the tee. So a little bit of room for improvement in both those categories, I would say. He's normally a little bit sharper than that. The putter last event was electric, exactly what we were hoping for. That was on a different type of grass, though. So is he necessarily due to regress? Not like a Bo Hostler, but Kurt Kitayama struggling, right? He's not really due for regression. Sometimes they even just flip it to a neutral, and that's a pop round. So they don't necessarily have to go out there, gain 2-3 strokes putting to have that kind of round, but he did that last week. So let's not act like that's impossible. He's got a lot of ball striking upside, and I think if you're playing in a single entry, that tee to green is what you should really be focusing on. It's the most consistent thing from round to round. If you're going to focus on projections, a lot of that is what's going to make them pop in the projections. So if you're running, for example, like an optimizer using my projections, you're going to get a lot of those sort of players. It's worth noting on here that the round isn't finished. So I do have some highlighting on here out here for the spreadsheet. So if they're yellow, that means that they haven't finished and they're on the cut line. A highlight in a green means that they haven't finished and they are within the cut line. So like in this case, it's minus 12, right? He's well within the cut line there. Novak down here is at minus 3 and has a few holes left. So he could get there. I believe he has 1 hole and then a par 5 to finish. So he could go out there, conceivably get to minus 5 and make the weekend, but he's red because he's outside the cut line. So it's a little bit of a legend there to make sure we're all on the same page when you see that highlighting. And that's how I'm showing that to my Patreons. And if I'm playing anyone, by the way, that's in any of those sort of situations, they're down as an if they make the cut down there. But none of the core plays or value plays are that type of player. So we're not going to have to worry about that. What's going on, Joseph? What's going on, Antonio? It says thoughts on Damon if he can find his putter. So the ball striking stats are incredible for Joel Damon. In fact, is he one of these? Let's see, Norlander, Alex Smalley, Damon. Yeah, so I'm gonna save the Damon question because he's one of the plays that we're gonna point out. But yeah, dude, the ball striking stats are crazy. I mean, I watched him on the ESPN Plus coverage, dart every single hole and just could not make a putt. Thoughts on Kirky? You bet his top 5 odds, and those back-to-back doubles killed you. His bounce back was impressive, though. Yeah, I thought that he showed some grit out there. A lot of times you have back-to-back doubles. One of them was a 4-putt. Next hole was just some sloppy around the green play coupled with bad putting. It was tough to watch, especially because it was on that coverage, but he rebounded like a champ. So I don't have that much of a hot take on him. His shots gain metrics don't tell you very much. He's been very average to this point. So I don't know. I thought it was impressive at the very least, and it doesn't surprise me. He's that kind of guy, right? Seems like it. He's not going to give up. He's from Georgia. They make some absolute bulldogs down there, and shouldn't surprise anyone, I would say. Next player I want to point out here would be a Mac Meissner. So if we go ahead and point out his shots gained metrics for you guys on the tab over here. So good old Mac McClure Meissner, if you're using his actual surname. He is gaining 3 strokes ball striking per round. So that is 2 strokes, approach a little bit over that, 2 and nearly a quarter, then about 3/4 of a stroke per round off the tee. That is, if I get out of just the Meissner tab here, if we sort that by shots gained ball striking, that is up there at number 5 in the field. So you've got Hostler, he's number 4 in shots gained to ball striking. Kitayama was number 3, like I mentioned before. Lucas Glover's number 1 in shots gained ball striking, as you'd expect for somebody gaining 4 shots gained approach per round. And it's not like it's not like he's holding out for eagles all the time. I guess 14 really helped him out, but it's not the reason why he's gaining 4 strokes, right? He did that over 2 rounds, not just over a 1-round sample size. And then Damon gained 2 strokes ball striking as well. Or sorry, he's number 2 in the field, I should say, in terms of shots gained ball striking. So Meissner number 5, pretty solid for this kind of price tag. And I've only got him at about 15% ownership, partially because he's at -7. And as I mentioned before, that -6, -7 range are going to be your earliest tee times. So if there's a spot to go out there and potentially find like a half a stroke advantage, I think that would be about the max that you could get in this kind of situation, just because it is 3 sums off both tees. If you guys haven't seen the tweet quite yet, maybe you just joined us. We talked about it earlier though. But Mac Meissner at $8,000 is the kind of player that is going off early. He's going to have soft greens, has to be aggressive. He's starting from behind. He's got, he's not going to gain that much from shooting -3, -4 tomorrow. But if he shoots -7, -8, which is what we're looking for in a ceiling performance, he could get up into that top 20 heading into Sunday, which gives him at least a chance, a prayer to go out there, win this golf tournament. But being the birdie fest that you get at a resort style golf course, he has no incentive to shoot -4, which I love. So I like the mindset of those early players, maybe slightly better conditions. Again, that's marginal at best. I would expect the PM scoring average tomorrow to be easier. Maybe not so much because conditions were better for the second half of tee times. That's how they set it up when it's less than an entire full field out there on data golf. That's how they like spice it up between AM and PM wave. It's like the first versus the second half. Second half's going to play quote unquote easier because the best players are in that wave. You have the guys that are in form towards the top end of the leaderboard, not so much because conditions would dictate that. So I love Meissner. He's an early guy that you can take. And I wouldn't say that he's low owned, like 15% compared to the rest of the players in this range. I'd say it's maybe slightly below the average ownership, but I mean, he's still over the double digit range. So it's not like we're taking a sub 5% owned diamond in the rough. Henrik Norlander has been just tearing up these fall series events. It's been kind of crazy. The kind of shots gained he's posted early in these events. He's yet to sustain it at this point, which makes it a little bit scary. But to this point is gaining 2.4 shots gained ball striking per round. So been doing it off the tee. He's gaining about 3/4 of a stroke per round there, over a stroke per round when it comes to his approach. He's been gaining with the putter too, which I don't know if we can count on him to gain 2 strokes putting per round. But if he can continue to manage that pace, it would be just very beneficial for him. Sorry, I'm on the wrong tab there. I was looking at shots gained metrics over there in data golf actually, but Henrik Norlander's been unbelievable the last 2-3 events. And if you take a look at his DP World Tour stuff, it's been even better. I mean, you'd expect him to maybe fall off or maybe have a bad performance over there. He's just been making cuts, top 25ing over there in pretty impressive fields. So over here in a fall series event, he's only $7,800. You could argue that he's under-owned, even at 15%, and underpriced at $7,800. So another player that I'll take, he's a later starter because he is towards the top end of the leaderboard, but weather's not the biggest deal out there for tomorrow. Early starter I'm playing would be an Alex Smalley. His ball striking stats, as you would suspect, like I said, there was going to be a theme with these plays, are fantastic. He's getting over a stroke and a half ball striking per round. He's losing with the putter, which is, I guess can happen. He's a streaky putter. So obviously has not had very much luck the first few days, but is a very high birdie or better percentage player. In fact, he's a top 30 birdie player in this field. After the cut, he's a top 20 birdie maker in this kind of field. So at this $7,500 price tag, I think he's a better than average player, especially in the fantasy component that we're looking for. And the tee time is great too. -6. I guess if there's going to be a slate weather lean, you want the early guys, and he should be one of the first 4 or 5 groups out, if not the first 2 or 3 groups out there for round 3. Joel Damon, we had a question about him. I wanted to get to this. I've got him at sub 5% ownership. Something tells me that he might not be that sub 5% owned because he's gaining 4 strokes ball striking per round. As I mentioned, I believe he was number 2 in the field in the category. -8, losing over 2. It's 2.4 strokes exactly per round. I'm out there on the greens. That's hopefully in the flip. Just like Kurt Kitayama, just like some of the other players, you never know what's going to happen day to day. But he's usually a much better putter than that. So I would expect some sort of regression out there for him. You can see his baseline on the surface is losing 1/4 of a stroke per round. So even if he does that, that's 2 strokes better in that category. He continues to gain 3 strokes tee to green ball striking. Tee to green, he's even better than that over the first few days. He goes out there and is even just close to a neutral. That's huge. That's a much better round than he was already solid the first few days. To go from solid to great out there from performance, let alone if he manages to gain in the category. So that's why I like Joel Damon. He is lower owned because he's at -8, a little bit further down the board. So if you're looking for some leverage, the issue is a lot of guys towards the top missed the cut this week. There was a little bit of carnage when it came to the ownership up top. So there's a lot more condensed of a player pool. So you just don't have that many options. It's hard to find low-owned players outside of Power. Chan Kim's not even low-owned. I guess Patrick Rogers being a little bit overlooked. Novak, if he makes the cut, will be extremely low-owned. But there aren't that many options until you get down here to the 7K range to really get different. That's why I like guys like a Joel Damon to go out there, take it sub 5% ownership, especially when they have those kind of ball striking stats. He's just due for a big round. So I love him, by the way. If I want to answer your question from before, he's one of my favorite plays. Alejandro Tosti also hitting the skin off the golf ball. So if we take a look at his stats so far, he's gaining 2.4 strokes off the tee. He's been neutral on approach. About neutral in every other category too. So I would say that this kind of stat profile is like a sleeping giant. I know that he's a bomber off the tee. He's been hitting a ton of fairways, but he's an extremely volatile player. And so far, he's just been kind of up and down in every category. And every once in a while, we get the legendary super low, nuclear low Alejandro Tosti. And at -7, he's got a perfect tee time, potentially one of the first 3-4 groups out there for Saturday. So $6,700, about 5% ownership. So I don't think it'll be completely overlooked because of the off the tee stats, but the kind of high upside birdie kind of player that I'm looking for tomorrow. And then that's it for the highlighted plays. So those are just 8 examples of the players that I'm looking to use. They're all gaining tee to green. In some cases that are low owned, some cases that are not, especially towards the top end of the board. But the key component is it's not who you play, it's how you play them out there in your lineups. You've got to go out there, make sure you're considering the total ownership out there. Better to use your product ownership if you want to set a cap out there on an optimizer. Make sure that you're not going to duplicate yourself with too many lineups. Best way to do that is to multiply your duplicate ownership. Your product ownership of your lineup, and then take it by the amount of entries that you're in. If that number, if you take the product ownership, multiply it by the amount of entries, if it's less than 1, you're probably okay. If it's 2 or 3 or much higher than that, then you're probably screwed. So if you're in a bigger contest, it's going to be a much lower number that you're going to get the product ownership to. If you're only in a 200 entry contest, right, you're going to have a lot more leniency out there with your build. So that's what I would say is more important out there for round 3 is find your ball strikers, find your core, build your player pool. There are plenty of other ball strikers that I'm using that we didn't talk about, right? Because I just can't talk about my entire player pool out here in the live stream. It would take forever. I've got to keep some stuff behind the Patreon paywall as well, as you guys could imagine. But the idea being that you make your ball striking pool, then you just make sure that you're building efficient lineups. They've got plenty of low-end options. We've got a whole handful, a dozen of sub 5% owned plays that we can get to that'll offset some ownership if you're taking it towards the top end of the board, which is kind of inevitable, especially if you're looking to play guys with decent stats. People aren't dumb. They're, looking at the same stuff that you and me are. Not in every case. There are some, guys that are just paying the rake, which are always great to have around, but a lot more educated bettors these days. So just, I think eating chalk at some spots is probably inevitable, but you don't have to take it at all 6 spots, and you can still build low owned, not duplicated, leveraged lineups out there in GPPs. Let's see if there's any last second questions. Let me get a sip of my Red Bull and then figure out what we're doing. We're gonna do some lineup construction is what we're gonna do after this. We're gonna build a lineup or two together, then we're gonna talk through props. So where did we leave off? Was it here? Have you noticed we haven't gone 3rd and 4th round coverage for any of the fall tournaments? I did. They did it the year before too, which is disappointing. My guess is that they just don't want to budget it. Like they figure people are watching college football, NFL out there on Sunday, and they're right. Like I actually don't watch, so that's why I don't care that much out there Saturday, Sunday. But I have noticed it because it's usually nice to have on the side. Like if they had the coverage when they do on NBC, of course, I bring it up on the side on my phone. But the ESPN Plus stuff, yeah, it's kind of weird. It's annoying too. It's like we're paying for it, right? And they're just like, let's go on vacation, right? Let's enjoy the area, I guess. McCarty is beyond impressive. Dude doesn't look like an amateur. Yeah, is he still technically an amateur? I didn't realize that. Yeah, it's definitely doesn't seem like he was an amateur that long ago. He won 3 times on the Corn Ferry Tour in, I believe, a month and a half. So yeah, he's a stud. You've got one lineup with those 6 players, and it's the last large field GPP. So I like that. I've got a lot of Hostler Glover lineups as well with Spawn, and I've got a lot of 6 of 6s. So a good week with the Weather Edge, right? Obviously made it very easy to get 6 of 6s. McCarty is the nails. And I keep calling him McCarthy, but I'll get it eventually. But yeah, McCarty is the nails. You're right. Is round 2 resuming and round 3 starting? Yeah, I believe it's starting at like 8:10. No. So Brian, it's not. They didn't account for the time zones when they put out that tweet. It's starting at 8:15 local time, and then the restart that is starting at 8:15 local time, and then the actual round 3 is starting at 10:15 local time. So it's a 2-hour window. It'll probably take them about an hour to finish the round at most, maybe shorter. There's not that many players that are out there to have to finish. There's not going to be like a log jam with time. So yeah, it's, I believe 10:15 when they're aiming to start. It could be plus or minus 10-15 minutes either way, I would imagine. To, I believe 12:15 was the last tee time that they said. First time Hodges at the top end for a long time. Usually he stays up there and contends, and the ball striking stats are fantastic on Lee Hodges. So great shout out there by Antonio. He's playing well. He's playing well in like every category, which is always a good thing to see. He's doing the Xander, this Patrick Cantlay approach, just gain across all 4 stat categories. And like you said, he's a bulldog. So that wouldn't surprise me at all if he stayed towards the top end of the board. Let me bring up Draftkings real quick. We're going to build a lineup together, talk through some lineup construction, and show you how to just manage your ownership. That's the thing with your round 3 lineups. You want to find leverage as much as humanly possible. Golf is an extremely variant game. So you should not have all the super high-owned players just because they project the best, unless you're playing in cash. You're playing in cash, play the best plays. I'm a big proponent for that out there in the cash format. But when you're playing in a large field GPP, even a contest like this, right, that has like 3,500 entries out here. This, by the way, is the decently big $20 that we have out there for round 3. This kind of lineup, you need to have a decently low product ownership to make sure that you're not going to duplicate yourself with one of these 3,500 lineups. So as I said before, really good way to do this is just to multiply your product ownership by the field, by this 3,529. So that'll give you a measure of your chances of duplicating out there, which is very useful out there when you're building lineups. If it's like 0.1 or like less than that, essentially means no chance out there with duplicating. If it's like 5 to 10, then you've probably got issues. And that's not going to happen very often in a 3,500 entry contest. You'll be surprised how easy it is not to have it over 1 for that kind of contest, but not so much when it's 50 to 100,000 entries. So it's always a good thing to look at. All right, so let's build this lineup now. So we're going to start up top with a few of our core plays. So I'm going to start with Kurt Kitayama. Second man in is going to be, we could go with the Glove again. Glove has just been unbelievable to this point. So yeah, he's 19% owned. Kurt Kitayama, we had it 23%. So that's a pretty decently chalky start. So we're going to have to at least somewhat manage our ownership going forward. If we took one more piece of chalk, we'd start to really have to force in sub 5%ers. But what we're going to do here with the third man in, which is going to be in this bottom end of the 8K range, maybe top end of the 8K range, if we want to force the salary a little bit, but it's got to be a guy that's sub 10% if we can. So I'm going to take a look at my actual projections real quick. So let me get rid of the stream version and bring up my actual projections. In that 8K range, our options are pretty limited when it comes to that. In fact, sorry, I have the wrong projections up. That's the main slate stuff. I need the Showdown stuff. There we go. Perfect. So in that 8K range, yeah, our options are very limited when it comes to getting a lot of leverage. In fact, Ryan Fox, if he makes the cut, is the lowest owned player. Patrick Rogers, 14%. And then if you go down to the very bottom of the 8K range, like Doug Gim is 12.6% owned. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the more balanced approach. We're going to take Doug Gim just because he's also a little bit lower owned. And what we're going to have to do for our next man in too is we're going to have to make sure he's probably even lower owned than Doug Gim, probably under that 12.5%. So towards that mid to top end of the 7K range, Matty Schmidt I've got it right around 11%. I've got Jacob Bridgman just under 10%, but Rico Hoey at 8% is probably what I would do in that kind of lineup. So let's throw in Rico Hoey. We might want to even leave a little salary on the table. If we wanted to be funky about it, even though we have 76,500 remaining, we could go down, take a punt like Toasty at $6,700, and then that opens up the 8K range for one last player. But the added caveat being here that you could by no means play Adam Svensson as your last man in. It would be using all your salary. He's also over or nearly 30% owned out there in GPPs. So I think the smart play, if you were taking that kind of more aggressive approach with your salary, would probably be to take like a Rogers, maybe a Harry Hall. If you went down and played like a JJ Spawn, you would be really different when it came to that kind of build. That's how I'd be building in large field GPPs. This kind of lineup could be totally fine out there with your ownership. You've got sub 10% owned Hoey, you've got 5% owned Toasty, 12% owned Doug Gim, which is, some differentiation right there. But where you get your last little bit is going down here, taking a lower owned player, which it's not even that low owned, right? These guys are like 14% in pretty much every case. But by leaving some salary on the table, that gives you some extra differentiation. So you're not going to duplicate yourself. So that's the main idea out there in GPPs. Force in some differentiation if you have to. And you're building sound lineups out there fundamentally. And by fundamental lineups, you don't want to duplicate yourself because it ruins your long-term EV. And you also want to make sure that you have enough game theory in there, right? Enough leverage to actually move up the GPPs and to go out there and leverage against the rest of the field. So that's important. Just make sure that you're ticking off those two things in every single lineup. Play per the fundamentals and go out there and have a better ROI. So that's out there for the round 3 showdown. That's all I've got for the Draftkings side. We're going to go over there to Underdog price picks, talk through pin locations, weather again a little bit, give you a little bit of a refresher here if you're just joining us on that end. We're going to talk through some slips there, but if you're still here for DFS, you can throw any questions down there in chat. If you were just coming here for the Draftkings side, I still appreciate you stopping on by. Smash the like button, everyone down there in chat. And if you have any last second questions, I will still take them. So just You can throw them down there at any point, even if you're joining us a little bit late and you're catching the end of the live stream. Try and catch me before I get off live. So these are the stat averages. I'm going to see if there's any last second comments I have to touch on. Looks like we're good on that end. So let's go ahead and dive into these props. So round 2 stat averages were pretty similar at the end of the day to what we had out there round 1, which is about 1.6 strokes under par. But the big difference out here for round 3 and that we've seen for these fall series events is that because it's such a weak strength of field, that after the cut line happens, that the field strength significantly improves. So what happens with the stat averages is that even if weather gets significantly worse, is that the stat averages usually improve. So out there for tomorrow, if you didn't see this before, they're going off in threesomes. So the tee time separation is only going to be 2 hours. And conditions look a little bit calmer in general. You can see the sustained winds are only about 10 miles an hour. The wind gusts are only about 16 miles an hour at their very peak, which compared to today, and especially compared to round 1, is not nearly as ferocious. So these averages I'm expecting to get better, not just because of the field strength and not just because of the weather getting better, but also because of the pin locations in the setup. It's moving day. It's usually when the course is set up for scoring. So all those factors would say that the stroke average is maybe better than 2 strokes under. Birdie average might be closer to the 5 per round that it was for round 1. In fact, maybe not even over 5 per round that it was for round 1. The bogey or worse average, I would say, is probably going to go down a little bit, maybe closer to like 2.25 to 2.3 per round. And then your fairway average, it's probably going to be around 12 like it was for round 1. Honestly, that one, maybe a little bit more variance, out there with your fairway stuff. But your green regulation average, probably going to go up to like 13.5, 14 per round. So a lot of different factors helping those averages, but the most significant being the field strength, the players that are actually making the cut being better than the guys that were out there missing the cut. On the Eurogolf side, we've got some averages down here too, which I guess I'll just point out. Played a lot easier than round 1. Round 1 played 0.2 over par. Round 2, it played 0.65 under par. So it was about a 0.85 shot advantage. Or improvement, I should say. We called for that. It was supposed to be a lot calmer. It had rained all of Wednesday, all of Thursday during play, or at least a lot of Thursday during play, especially during the morning. And then it was a lot calmer out there today. So out there for Saturday, to spoil it, we're going to take a look at the forecast here before we talk about the Eurogolf stuff, which will be after PGA. But it looks the exact same. So if you're looking for Eurogolf averages, these will be pretty good out there for your round 3 exposure. Let me go ahead and bring up Prize Picks. I know for a fact that they had both boards up already. So let me go ahead, type that in, make sure we bring it up on a tab. And then Underdog didn't have anything up quite yet, but maybe they've come along. They didn't get it up last time around. I guess they've got to take some sort of ED medication, huh? They couldn't get the board up. But they've let's see what we got going down in chat. The pin locations are up. Sweet. Let's do that too. So we looked at the weather. Let's go through pins. Which, by the way, for this golf course, the PGA course that is even more important than the weather, I would say. All right, there we go. Let me share my screen and let's go through this, which it's great that they actually have the pin locations up. Yesterday, if you weren't here, we had to go through the sports books and their dashboard to get the pin locations, which is a good backup. So if you haven't seen that before, you don't know how to get the backup pins in case they don't post the right one, check out that video, but it's not fun to do. Keith Mitchell pulled a Hideki and bitch quit. Yeah, he did. A lot of guys did, actually. That AM wave did not play nearly as hard as I think what the stat averages showed. I think part of it was psychological. At least that's what I took away from it, especially watching like the ESPN Plus coverage with a few guys. It felt like because they got the short end of the stick yesterday, that some of them just didn't care this morning, particularly the guys that were a little bit sour round 1. It didn't go out there and get to like -4, -5. So I think it affected people differently. I think Keith Mitchell was one of the guys that gave up. But there were a handful of other ones too, which is, I don't know, happens a lot. These guys are soft, especially the ones that have been around for a while. They run into any sort of issue at all, any sort of conflict, and they run. which is whatever. Let's go to shot tracker. So let's get the hole 1 and then let's do this thing hole by hole. So hole 1 is in the front right. It is a long-ish par 4, but this plays closer to like 430 yards, actually 440, maybe be a little bit more accurate. It's over here on the front right, which is away from the bunkers. It was, I believe, also in this right side out there, round number 1. You've got a little bit of a backstop over here. You do have a front stop though, so you don't want to, spin it off the screen. That wouldn't be great, but you're going to have a little bit of a backstop to work it close to the hole. So I would say that you're going to see a lot more birdies here at hole number 1 because it is like a mid-length par 4. Your minish, like I would say average length players, like maybe even your below average players are probably going to have something that's releasing into this green. So having a backstop is going to be especially useful to hit it close. It's usually tough to get close to a front pin location because especially with like a mid iron or something like that, because you need that room for it to like roll and get close to the pin. But when you have a backstop like this, you don't necessarily need that room, right? You just got to hit it onto that shelf. It'll roll back into that same plateau. And that's why I think you're going to see more birdies at hole number 1. And this is a perfect example of a moving day pin. This golf course is perfect for this kind of setup. And it's typical what we see on Saturday on the PGA Tour. So that's why we want to go through these pins. We went through them yesterday, even though it wasn't moving day, because they matter out there on the prop side. They really matter, especially at a golf course like this where it's just crazy. I keep going to the wrong tab. Let's just get it out there. So I'll do it so I don't do that again. 2 is in the back middle. That looks a little tricky. Let's see. Let's look at the green again. It's a shorter par 4. So it's going to be a little bit further back. It was closer to this like center of the green, like center to like middle back. Now it's going to be probably around where my cursor is right there. So that brings that hazard to the left I talked about in the stream yesterday into play, even more so than what we had out there for this round 2 pin. And then potentially even that rock shit to the right. So if it's going to be windy, it's only hole 2 though, so I don't think the leaders are going to have to worry about it. They're going to tee off way before the wind kicks off on hole 2. But like the guys starting on hole number 10, by the time they get to their back 9, like maybe they could have an issue at this hole. So this is I don't know, it should still be a birdie hole, especially before the wind kicks up. But it's a little bit more tricky because it's further back there. So while they're going to give these players a few bones, like hole 1, I think it's a very soft pin location. They're not all going to be easier. Like they're going to try and make it a little tricky in at least a few different spots. So here's hole 3. So 3 is in the top right, which is up here on the shelf. You do have a little bit of a backstop, a little bit of a side stop over here to the back left. But it's not as easy as what you had for rounds 1 and 2. Round 2, it was down here in this bowl. You can see the backstop right there. And then round 1, it was over here on this corner. We had the backstop to the back right. So I guess if you're a drawer of a golf ball, it's probably a really good pin location. At least for me, I would aim at the pin, hit a little tight draw. If it tight draws onto the slope, it comes back. Maybe it's a hole in 1. If I haven't hit my straight ball, which I do quite often, then maybe it's a hole in 1 because they hit it straight and it goes in the hole. So for me, it's a fantastic hole location. It feels like a win-win. In fact, I want to play this golf course in this kind of situation. But maybe we see a hole in 1 because honestly, if I'm seeing that, guys like a Grayson Sig, did he make the cut? Am I about to make like an all-time call? I'm gonna call out a few drawers of the golf ball to make a hole in 1. So yeah, Grayson Sig made the cut. Let me look at the field real quick. I got to do this. Drawers of the golf ball. That's the thing. A lot of these players, I don't even know like their predominant golf ball flight. Cameron Champ could make a hole in 1 there. He's got a draw. Lucas Glover, he's got a draw. And it's Lucas Glover. He could 100% make a hole in 1 there. I don't know if any of these other guys hit draws. Like some of them, like I'm sure I do, but like, yeah, I know Grayson Sig. He throws that hook out there. It's not even a draw. Malnati didn't make the cut, right? Actually, I should double check myself, right? Yeah, he didn't make the cut, right? Yeah, yeah, he tried to, but yeah, didn't make the cut. Probably those three will go with. I can't give myself that many outs. That wouldn't be fair, but one of those guys could make a hole in one in that kind of hole. It's just at the perfect spot there on that ledge. You hit it up onto that little shelf. I mean, you could just go right at it. Like I said, maybe you luck out by hitting it straight at it. At least for a draw player. Fader, not so much, but if you hit a draw, you're licking your chops on that hole. Hole 4 is over there on the front left shelf. Come on, load up here. So here's hole number 4. It's, I think, a pretty tough pin location. So it's got a little bit of a slope here. So if you miss to the left, it's not the easiest up and down because the slope's working against you. And I would say that this hole, it's not easier or harder than what you had for yesterday, but it's I don't know, pretty neutral, all things considered. It's definitely not an easy pin location. Hole 5, it's in the back left. So this is a potentially drivable par 4. I think that one day they might move up the tee box here because not everyone's been going for hole number 5, which I think they were expecting more players to go for this because it's only 312 yards. It's at elevation, so you can hit a 3-wood at the screen. But because of how tight it is, people haven't been doing it. So something tells me like there's a chance they move up the tee box, but I don't know. It's probably only like a 20% chance that they actually do so. If they did that, you would be hitting like a driving iron from there, which I've done at golf courses, like especially down here in Florida. Like there's drivable par 4s that I don't necessarily hit driving iron on. I hit driver, but my buddies go out there. My brother go out there and hit driving iron on all the time on like a 275-yard hole. So it's something that we could see. It's not easy to hit the green with a driving iron from that far, especially if it's a tough pin location. Like, what's the pin location? Yeah, it's back left, right? That'd be crazy. So it's the hardest pin location that they've done so far here in the back left. I'm throwing it out there right now. There's a chance if they throw it up, if they move up the tee box, and then they make it a back left pin location, that might be the sickest hole that they've done for a long time. That'd be a lot of fun to watch, that's for sure. So hey, PGA Tour, if you're watching this, you should do that. So hole number 6, or if you're watching this and you know somebody at the PGA Tour, somebody let a guy know. Over here on the front right side, you've got a pin location. You've got a little bit of a backstop over here to the right side, but also a slope in front of the pin that if you overspin it, you can get it to come back. So you've got to be a little careful with your spin control there. Hole 7's in the back left. So you can get close in 2 if you're going for this green. I wouldn't say that it's easy or hard in terms of getting up and down. It's pretty wide open. Just, I guess, don't short side yourself long and left at that kind of hole. Hole number 8 is in the front left corner. So this is already a short hole, but it's going to be even shorter for this kind of pin. In fact, I think that you could also see one of these par 3s moved up and made to like 100 yards because it's that kind of golf course. Like you've seen that a lot of times with the golf course setup. And a lot of times it's to a front pin location because it makes it all about trying to control that spin into it. Hole number 9 is a front right pin location. Pretty hard to get there in 2, especially because it's 600 yards. You're probably hitting a driving iron at the very least into that. Or your 3-iron. Hole 10 is a back middle pin location. It's like around here, over here on this green complex, a little bit of a side slope that can help you get close to it. So if you're a fader, maybe that's an easier hole location for you. Hole 12 or hole 11, I should say, I'm getting ahead of myself, is a front middle pin location. So it's a long hole. So this front pin location isn't actually easier. A lot of times people think front pin location means easier, but yeah, that's usually the case for a wedge hole, but not so much when it's a 500-yard par 4. So this will actually be a harder pin location than maybe even the one that you had today. A lot of people were missing long, and that was the issue at this hole. Here, the issue is going to be missing in this bunker to the right. So it'd be a tough up and down. You can see that slope over there. It's going to be tough to get close to that pin. It's I actually think maybe harder than the one that you had for today. Let's go to hole 12. 12 is that front left pin location that I was looking at. Come on, let's get to hole 12. There we go. Over here on the front left side. So where is it exactly? So it's a little bit further in, closer towards the second bunker. So it's like over here where this 2 is where the pin location is going to be. So this is a honey pot. It's what we call this one. So you've got the backstop to the left. You've got the side stop to the right. So if you miss long, you miss a little bit right, you're going to end up getting closer to this pin location. You're going to see a ton of birdies there. Hole 13 is a back left pin location. Come on, low. That's also, I mean, look at this, right? Back left pin location, which probably seems tough if you're just looking at the pin sheet without slopes. But look at all the slopes that are going to help you get close to it. I mean, it's going to draw you pretty much the whole way to the pin location. So I think, hot take here, 13 is a 500-yard par 4, but maybe you have somebody hole out for eagle there just because of the pin location and how that's set up. 14 is a drivable par 4. This is another one that I guess they could move up, but I think it'd be too easy to move up to make it a driving iron. It's just not a very interestingly shaped green. But yeah, it's over here in the back left, right? Yeah, 14, sorry, back right. Good thing I checked that. So over here on this back right side, so you have a little bit of a side slope to help you to the right, but I don't know. I'd say it's probably about the same as what you had for round 2. I don't know if that really makes it that much easier. It's still drivable par 4. It's not like you're hitting a wedge into it. 15 is a front left pin. So this is a par 3. So it's another shorter hole, one that they could even potentially move up the tee box on, but we'll have to see. It's moving day. Sometimes they tinker around with that. You can see over here, you have a slope to the left of this pin location, which will help you out. And another false front. So they're definitely playing that game a lot. They're giving you slopes, but they're also giving you a lot of false fronts. 16 is a front middle pin. So this is another longer par 4. So it's not necessarily easier because of the front pin location. And especially with a false front on a long par 4, that is those are some of the hardest pin locations that you can pick on those kind of holes. Hole 17 is a back right pin. So it is a shorter par 3, but it is tucked here towards a slope on the right side. And then 18 is a back left middle pin location. It's a lot, but it's like here towards the 2, I think is actually a great marker. It's close to where the pin location is going to be. It's, I don't know, pretty average. I would say that the one for today was actually harder than the one that you're going to have for tomorrow, just because of that slope in front of it. It's pretty docile with the sloping around it. Maybe if you miss in this bunker on that, right side, it could be tough to get it close with your bunker shot. But you have enough room to get it close. You're a good bunker player. You can get it close there. And yeah, everywhere else, you'd be totally fine to get up and down. You'd have plenty of room pretty much from every single angle. And I think you're going to see a lot of birdies there at 18. So no surprise with the setup, I would say. Plenty of easier holes, plenty of holes that look pretty tricky. In terms of the averages, I guess to circle back to that, it was about 4.6 birdies per round. I think it's going to be about 5 per round with the increased player just ability out there from day to day, right? Getting all the shitty players out of there, cut over the first 36 holes. And then also with the weather, right? It's a little bit softer. They're going off earlier. The entire field's going off earlier. That's why I think and it's going to be warm early too. They're starting around like 11, 12. It's going to be almost to its max temperature. So I think that you're going to see some pretty solid scoring and probably about 5 birdies per round. So let's bring up Prize Picks. We have that up. Has Underdog finally posted? Nope. Asleep at the wheel again. Figures. So let's take a look at this PGA board. So I mentioned before that the averages for these are going to get easier, but this board is priced for that. So just like they had for round 2, there's some 67.5s, especially for some of the players in better form. Like a Bo Hostler, I expect pretty good things from, but he's got to get to -4 to cover 67.5 line. And there's a lot of guys at 67.5. If I was going to take an under, if there's a 68.5 on one of those really top tier ball strikers, like I'd consider it in a Joel Damon. So if there's any prop that really catches my eye initially, it's probably this Joel Damon prop because he's been doing a ton out there on approach and off the tee, and that's sustainable from day to day. And the scoring average, I think, is going to be 2.5 under par. So you're just asking him to gain a half a stroke per round. So even if he loses strokes to the field putting, like he could very easily shoot -3. So hopefully he can keep it out of the lava rocks. That's the huge issue with these strokes lines. And we're just going to take one for now, because what we're going to do is we're going to cycle over here to Eurogolf real quickly before we hop over to Underdog, hopefully. That we're still waiting on to post a board, but hopefully after we find some Eurogolf stuff, they finally come along with some projections. We're going to take a look at the Eurogolf stuff, because I was taking a look at these projections before, and I'm going to bring up the Eurogolf site because they have projections posted for the weather. They always do it. They post it day by day, and based on their accuracy versus like the HRRR model or the ECM model over there on that side of the pond, they have better accuracy than these weather apps. So I'm going to trust them on their forecast. They obviously pull it from the right spot. Just like the PGA Tour, they likely even have a team doing it just like us. I shouldn't say like just like us, but just like the PGA Tour. And here's the forecast. So 5 to 10 miles an hour the entire day. It gets warmer as the day goes on. It's pretty misty early. So if you saw the projection out there for Friday's forecast, this is the exact same. The temperatures are nearly identical across the board. And even the mist early in the day is exactly what we had out there for round 2. So if we take a look at the scoring averages, which once again was about 0.65 under par and about 4.01 birdie or better per round, it's only going to get a little bit better than that. Just like you had for the PGA Tour, when you have that cut line, you get those lower tier players. The guys are a little bit out of form out of there, and they do a moving day setup usually for the DP World Tour as well. So when we can't look at the actual slopes, they don't have that same kind of shot tracker available over there. We can look at the pin locations, but you don't get that shot tracker aspect. You just kind of have to assume that they're setting up easier out there for moving day. I would expect the averages to get just slightly easier than what we had out there. So when we take a look at this prize picks board, if I think it's going to play to like a -1 scoring average, it's a par 71, by the way. So Joel Damon has to shoot -3 to cover that kind of line, which we can look at the sportsbook lines, by the way, which is going to be important. Hopefully it passes the sportsbook test, because I'm assuming Damon would probably be juiced under that. And then they didn't have sportsbook line posted just because they haven't finished round 2 yet. So just like the PGA Tour, they didn't finish over there on that side of the pond. So they have to finish up in the morning and then get the cut line all sorted. They don't have lines to look at. So in fact, the PGA Tour might not have shit posted either, which is going to be annoying, but it does open up value. The sports books are usually a really good resource for these prop sites. You know, they're looking at the lines on Caesars. They're looking at the lines on DraftKings, FanDuel, all of those different kind of sites. So you'd be crazy not to look at them yourself. Let's see. So I just want to see what they have on here. So first off, Caesars doesn't have them. I'll share my screen so you guys can see what I'm looking at too. But I don't think any of them are going to have it posted, which honestly, I think I prefer than them all having them posted. So yeah, nothing there. DraftKings, a few guys that haven't finished yet. And then let's look at this. Yeah, 2 guys that haven't finished yet. So that's crazy. So yeah, we're in the situation where they have nothing to work with. And I guess we got to look at the DP World Tour stuff, which I'm assuming they also don't have stuff posted for. So yeah, Caesars doesn't have it up. Go down here to golf. Let's look at the Open de France. Yeah, nothing posted. And then, yeah, they never have stuff posted out there for the DP World Tour. So, yeah, they're flying blind over here. And one thing I'll say, I was looking at some of the green regulation stats. Yannick Paul is top 4 in the field in hitting greens, hitting just good old green regulations. Number 1 was Nikolai Højgaard. He was tied with someone else. I forget the other guy he was tied with. But Yannick Paul was out there tied for 4th. So, at 70 strokes, it's a par 71. I think the scoring averages go from 0.65 under to maybe closer to -1 under par. And Yannick Paul being a really good player long-term, hitting the ball really good on approach this week, seems like a solid under on stroke. So the conditions should be just as solid as we saw for round 2. The forecast, by the way, my bad. I didn't mean to stop streaming there. We're going to bring up the forecast in Le Golf National, which I think we have Golf National in here. No, we don't. I'll just type it. Golf National. So his forecast has it at sub 8 miles an hour, sub 6 miles an hour, sub 6, sub 9, so sub 10. Okay. This one's sub 6, 7 miles an hour. And then this one is like 8 at the very most. So these forecasts are all pretty favorable out there. They're all spot in line with what they were calling on the DP World Tour, something in that 5 to 10 mile an hour range on every single forecast. So I would expect conditions to be what I'm expecting, right? Maybe like a 1 under par scoring average, which I think makes this pretty decent value. So what I'm going to try and do, sorry, we don't have anything to compare to with Joel Damon or Yannick Paul. Yeah, we're just going to take this. This will be the slip over here on Prize Picks. Let's see if we have Underdog dancing, because if not, yikes. I'd be unfortunate. FanDuel has odds up for props. They do. And for the DP World Tour, this is the same course. It is, yeah. Le Golf National, fantastic finishing 3 holes, very demanding, set up perfectly for spectators too. So it's got a great energy when it comes down to it. And it's a pretty big event too. So I'll be watching it, especially on Sunday. Maybe a little bit for round 3, but especially like all Sunday. Thoughts on Berger? Impressive bounce back today. Yeah, showed some grit out there. Went from +1 to making the cut. A lot of it was ball striking based, was just hitting the absolute cover off it. Fairways, greens, just perfect ball striking. And yeah, nothing I can say bad about it. Round 1 was terrible, but looked that much better out there round 3. Yeah, FanDuel has them up, or has no odds, you're saying. Yeah, it sucks. I don't know. I like having them to compare to, but sometimes it is a blessing. So yeah, nothing for PGA, right? I can see it. Yeah, it's blacked out over there. So what I'll say about this is they've been copying the PGA board. So let's just take a look at more stuff here on the PGA side. Like, I don't want to leave you hanging on just that end of props. Like normally we'd go through a whole entire board, right, and talk stuff through. For whatever reason, Underdog doesn't want to give any sort of variation, and their payouts are lower. So I've been playing a lot more on Prize Picks. So let's just spend a little bit more time over here, because there were more plays on Euro that I think makes sense. So I already know some stuff I want to mix in over here. And then PGA was the board I didn't look at as much, but I'm sure we can find some stuff there too. So let me add in one of these plays. So Højgaard was number 1 in the field in hitting greens. Rasmus is an absolute killer at this golf course. And Jesper Svensson, he was number 4 in the field when it came to hitting greens regulation. So these 3, to me, were projecting very well as well. So I'm not 100% sure I'm going to play all of them, but one of these 3 is probably going to get paired with my exposure. And if I guess had to think through it, Højgaard had his bad round today. He's kind of due for a good round. Right? If you look at regression, he's due for some positive regression out there around 3. And historically, he's a really good moving day player. So he's starting with a little bit less pressure because he had that down day. Right now, he can just kind of get after it for Saturday. Whereas Højgaard's towards the top end of the leaderboard. It's Svensson too. So I'm going to take Højgaard here just because of the mental factor. I think he has that edge. And it is an edge. You see that with players. Like if you had a really good day the day before, it's not impossible to back it up, but I think it's a little bit tougher. At least the averages, the stats would tell us that it is. And vice versa. Like you blow up the day before, Garrett Kigo shot -6 today. Like it happens a lot more than you would think. Let's see. So I love that Joel Damon prop that we took. Henrik Norlander could be a look here. He is hitting the ball very well. I'll show you guys the shots gained metrics here. But let me see if there's anyone else that really catches my eye. Lee Hodges. I know we mentioned his ball striking, right? He's hitting the ball very well. But yeah, let's find this here for Norlander. So his shots gained tee to green so far, about 3/4 of a stroke off the tee. We mentioned this for the DFS guys, but we'll head back to it here for the prop people. And then getting over 1.5 strokes per round on approach. So he's been pretty solid to this point. In fact, he's a top 7 player in the category. And then he's here at 69 strokes. So I think the scoring average is going to be like 69, maybe slightly better. I think 69 is probably a pretty good projection out there for round 3. And he's playing much better than your average player. So Højgaard, number 1 in greens regulation. Henrik Norlander there at 69 strokes, another play that I would take. So that's a 2-2-mans that you can consider out there. They're 3x payouts because you're mixing in 2 tours, which is something that I've been doing for the payouts because 2.75x is just, I don't know, it's not that big a deal, but it feels like you're just getting taxed. So to avoid that, I play props for both tours. Why not mix them in just to get rid of that aspect? The correlation goes away, but if you can nail it, right, if you get both events right, it's a pretty decent advantage to go after that kind of thing. Let's see. Anything on Underdog quite yet? It's 11:39. Come on, guys. You'd think they'd post them by midnight, but I guess not. Yeah, still blacked out over there. So they'll probably copy and paste the board regardless. So, I mean, on the prize pick side over here, I know we mentioned those 2 unders, Damon Norlander, but there's potentially a few other guys at 68.5, 69 I would play for unders. But the 67.5s, even 68s are just, they're hard for me to want to take. To have to shoot -4 to go under, even for like an elite tier player, I don't love that prospect. So like while Bo Hostler's hitting the ball very well, a Lucas Glover, a few of the other guys we took for DFS, you might be tempted to want to take to shoot -4. It's just, I mean, if even the scoring average is -2, you're asking them to gain 2 strokes to the field. That's something that those players do like 40% of the time. So if you're comfortable taking something that's a sub 50% outcome, then like by all means do it. But the smart play with a lot of those players would be to go out there and take a fade. So I'm probably going to stay away from the 67.5s. And the issue is it's such a fine line in golf because if you take a look at the 68.5s, especially like for these top tier players, their unders at 68.5, it's like the flip flop, right? It's like a 60% hit rate that you're going to see with those because the guys that are on the field, on the board here, I should say, are the top like 20 players in the field for the most part. Like at least like the top half players are the guys that you have up here, which means that they're going to gain strokes to the field. And if it's going to be a -2 scoring average, right, like you can see why the projections are what they are and why at a 68.5 projection that a majority of the board would be under that sort of line. So it's worth noting that the players on here, like I agree with the projection, but at 67.5, it's the opposite, right? So that's why I have hesitancy, even with the 68s, because they've still got to shoot -4. Like I don't know, it's a little bit better. You have push equity at 68, but it's just not great. It's not something that I personally am probably going to do. I'm just going to stay away from it, especially because we have those 2 other spots that were at softer projections. If we look at the birdie or better props, we didn't even look at these. So my bad on there. Maybe we have some value here too. So we didn't fully deep dive this quite yet. 4.5 birdies isn't a terrible look there. Even 5 birdies for Harry Hall isn't a bad look. He's the number 13 birdie maker on the PGA Tour. Champ makes a shit ton of birdies. I know Chan Kim is a top 30 birdie maker, but he's at 5.5, so it's a little bit of a steep projection, a little bit of a steep price if you're asking me. Same thing with Bo Hostler too, right? Like I like him, but 5.5, McCarty at 5.5, that's just, I think the field average is going to be about 5 per round. So that's why even a Harry Hall at 5, I'd take for an over and feel pretty confident with it. But these other guys, like 5.5 is kind of like a 67.5 line. I guess a little bit less so, actually. Like there are a few guys at 5.5 that I would for sure take an over. But Harry Hall is the best birdie maker in this field and was an outright bet of mine this week, or a player that I love at this golf course. Still went over the 4.5 line for us today, despite not having his best stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to take him again, especially with some moving day pins. They looked pretty easy in a few cases. And then, yeah, we'll mix in a Euro golf prop. So we already had those 2 that we mentioned before. It's like, what do we want to do for the last pairing? Jesper Svensson, I don't know if we're going to force it in. Like, he's got to get to 6 birdies, so I don't know if he's my favorite play, but if you wanted to do that, right, you could mix in one of those 2 other Euro plays that we were talking about before. I'm really hoping that we get a underdog board at some point that isn't just copy and pasted for prize picks, because they used to post some pretty soft projections, and they stopped doing that. They also stopped doing fairway and green regulation lines. They stopped doing bogey or worse lines as well. It's like they laid off their lines maker or something. So I've been calling for that for a while. He's done some pretty shady things when it comes to DNPs and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's not a great thing when someone loses their job, but it was probably called for. Alex Fitzpatrick, I was looking at these guys at 69.5, but and Alex Fitzpatrick's been hitting the ball really well in approach. A Nicholas Neugaard Muller is an electric player off the tee. He's been playing really well recently too. Out there with some top 5 finishes. So I like that Harry Hall prop, as I was mentioning before, but this Muller prop might not be the worst pairing out there for it. So yeah, if I was going to go with anything right now, or Fitzy, like which one's better? Let me take a look at something real quick. I want to see. I have to bring up something behind the Data Golf paywall real quick, just because it's really easy to look at. I just want to look at their shots gained recently. So looking at Nicholas Neugaard first, he's gained in his last 4 starts, and he's won at the Brett Fed British Masters, and then top 7, top 12 finish. Fitzpatrick, I don't think he's been as sharp, but he's been solid to this point. So Alex Fitzpatrick, actually he's lost in 3 of his last 4. So that makes that pretty simple. Take the guy that's won, that has 2 top 12 finishes, and don't play the guy that is lost in 3 of his last 4. So yeah, this would be the combination I'd go with. It'd be Harry Hall, Muller, if you were going to take anything for a third pairing, which it's been a while since we've done 3 pairings here in live stream, but I love it. I think that there's some value on that board, especially with conditions being potentially even easier out there for round 3. And yeah, no underdog board. So we'll take a little bit more time over there on the prize pick side. Of course, when we get a board, I will be posting any underdog exposure over there on my Patreon page, as well as anything that I add on top of that over there on Prize Picks. So for my official exposure, what I actually enter, make sure to check out the Patreon for that, as well as for the spreadsheet that we went through before that has all of my exposure, all of my projections for round 3 showdown. Best of luck with everything that you guys are getting to. And then let's catch up on some of the questions, comments down there in chat. Yeah, bitch quit. That was Keith Mitchell. He bitch quit. It was sad to see, but a funny term to use, that's for sure. Why can't the PGA Tour finish a round of golf? I think it's the time of year in this area. If you see the surroundings, it's got that like big rock wall. So when the sun gets low, it covers a lot earlier than other places. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. So I think it's just the area that the golf course is sitting in, and maybe they have to come at a different time of year because, yeah, they had no chance at finishing today. I mean, you saw that round 1, and that was probably the most predictable, delayed a round 3 that we've ever seen before. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got for this live stream. Appreciate you guys stopping by as usual. For all of that content, for the spreadsheet, all my prop slips, you guys know where to check it out. The Patreon page. Check out the Ship It Nation as well. If you guys want that all-encompassing site, again, Luke 10 for a discount off any membership. It'll be hooking you guys up. It'll hook me up as well. And best of luck with all the exposure you're getting to. So cash out into prop slips. Go down, take down a GPP for me, guys. And we're doing the same thing out there for round 4. So stop on by for that. We'll be doing that after round 3 finishes. And also, I'll be putting out my week 6 main slate video out there tomorrow morning. So make sure to keep an eye out for that if you're an NFL DFS player. We're talking some strategy, my top stacks of the week, also some props on Underdog and Prize Picks over there for the NFL slate. So if you enjoyed this, you like the database approach, well, I'll do the same thing over there for NFL. So make sure to check out that content. It's over there on my Patreon page too. I have that whole side covered. That's all I've got, guys. Best of luck, as I mentioned before. I've got some NFL projections to get to and some prop slips to enter myself. So let's get to it. As I said, hopefully I see a few takedowns out there, and we'll regroup tomorrow evening.